David loves being David, and there's no one like him. David, David, David.
David's the all-American boy. He's got that look. He's got that attitude.
We're on it.
I'm smiling just thinking about him.
If somebody had to ask me to describe David, I'd say fearless. He will do anything.
This car's something else.
What does show about David is his heart. It's just the biggest pulsing heart.
I'm sure it's a hell of a story. There's something great about getting knocked down on your and going, oh yeah, watch this.
David Hasselhoff, now on Biography.
Welcome, David Hasselhoff!
You can't really be an American and not hear the name David Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff!
David Hasselhoff!
David Hasselhoff.
For millions of people worldwide, David Hasselhoff is the suntanned face of America. 2 wildly popular TV shows have made him one of the most recognizable people on the planet.
He has a presence about him. He's tall, he's 6'4".
You don't have to be intimidated.
I kept thinking, Kit, when I saw him. Knight Rider.
Hi, ladies.
David loves people, and that's what makes him such a great star, because he doesn't do this. Oh no, don't take my picture, don't take my picture. He's a really cool man. I mean, and I'm not because I'm married to him. That is one of the reasons why I married him.
That's all I can say.
His looks brought him fame as a daytime soap opera stud.
I mean, what'd you expect? Did you just come home and find things the way you left them?
His playfulness on TV's Knight Rider made him a primetime star.
Could you speak in sign language? Or a little slower?
And a preteen idol.
You take a direct hit, kid? I went to 40 different countries and visited children because no matter what language they were, Michael Knight, they go, Michael Knight! Escuchi fantastico, super car!
By the 1990s, Hasselhoff had ripened into a bankable leading man and rode the wave of the most popular TV show of all time, Baywatch.
I'm not trying to exploit it. Baywatch was seen in 147 countries in 32 different languages to a worldwide audience of 1.3 billion people a week.
Hasselhoff has built a multi-million-dollar franchise out of making it all look easy. In fact, it was anything but. Behind the casual charm and Greek god looks was a deeply ambitious actor, hungry to be taken seriously, and an overachiever, out to prove he'd worked hard to earn every bit of his success.
David was always mocked at for a lot of different reasons. 1, because of the babes of Baywatch. 2, because he talked to cars. 3, because he was a great-looking guy, probably better looking than any male star on television. 4, he was very tall. Oh, excuse me.
Are you always wet?
As often as possible.
Always his own toughest critic, Hasselhoff has used his industry power to enrich not only family and friends, but also strangers around the world, from Malibu to Vietnam and everywhere in between.
He's really sweet, and I think that he wants to help everybody in the world, and he tries his hardest. He doesn't have to do these things, but he does it because it makes him happy.
You can either play a hero, or you can be a hero, or you can do both.
He's like the Energizer Bunny that keeps going and going and going.
Ironically, Hasselhoff's first ambition wasn't TV stardom. It was success as a Broadway performer and recording artist. That dream would take him on a detour halfway around the world.
I hear I'm big in Japan, but I'm big because I'm really tall.
He is a huge recording artist in other countries, especially Germany, where he's known and loved as a singer.
Germany! What is that? I've been looking for freedom!
He sold 5 million records in Germany, at times beating Michael Jackson and Madonna. In 1989, he was even invited to perform for millions as the Berlin Wall crumbled.
Dankeschön.
He managed to make a career and, hit the jackpot in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. So that pretty much makes you an institution in the United States.
It's almost like being on a bullet. It's faster than a ride. And if you're not holding on, good luck trying to catch up.
But sometimes, the man who questioned whether he deserved so much has pushed himself too hard. He struggled with self-doubt, and an addiction he was determined to overcome.
Well, I held a record for a while at Betty Ford with pretty high alcohol content because when I do things, I do them to the fullest. Through the help of a lot of people, God and myself, and specifically my family, I turned it around.
For Hasselhoff, who considers his own father his role model and hero, life has always centered around family. He was born David Michael Hasselhoff in Baltimore, Maryland, on July 17, 1952. The cute and affectionate youngster was doted on by his family. Parents Joe and Dolores, and 4 sisters.
I'm the fortunate one who had a great childhood and a great family life. We used to play for like 3 or 4 hours after school until we'd come in for dinner and then cram our homework and go to bed. Just real physical, a lot of fun, and very good relationship with my mom and dad. My dad traveled a lot. He was Brinks, armored cars. He was a salesman. Very gregarious, very outgoing, and he loved to do road trips. We went on a road trip every weekend.
We always had in our basement just a row of costumes and props. My mother made me a puppet theater, and there was just always a lot of imagination going on in our household all the time, making up songs. Everybody's just having a really good time being silly.
Energetic but shy, the little boy fell in love at the age of 7 with performing.
I saw a play called Rumpelstiltskin, and when I saw this play, I immediately wanted to do it, and I got in it, and it was magical. You could escape from reality, from whatever you wanted to do by just putting on some face and something and going out and playing another character. My reality was great. I really didn't need to escape, but it was like I felt really confident behind the lights, behind the facade of the character that I would play. Even when I was 7 years old, I had no fear.
But the young would-be stage star never stayed anywhere long enough to build up a following.
Baltimore, Maryland, to Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville to Atlanta, Atlanta to outside of Chicago. So we moved around a lot. I never really had like a lot of close best friends because as soon as I made close friends, I would leave. My friends were really the ones I picked up in the theater.
The family's constant relocations took an emotional toll on David. He also had little interest in schoolwork. David's focus on theater didn't help his grades, but his parents understood and encouraged his passion.
My parents grew up during the Depression, and my mother and father were denied a lot of opportunities. And so my mother made sure that whatever we wanted to do, we were able to try.
My father was such a guiding light because he's so outgoing and talks to everybody. He's the kind of guy that can have dinner with Ronald Reagan and talk to Ronald Reagan and get on the bus to go back to the hotel and have a complete conversation with the bus driver about something else. And I learned that from my father because I am my father's son. My mom was really supportive. When she saw me, she said to me, "You got it." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You got it." I said, "Well, that's what I want to do, Mom. I want to do musical comedy. I want to do theater."
By 1966, 14-year-old David Hasselhoff was focused on being an actor, memorizing the scores of classic Broadway musicals, and idolizing charismatic movie stars like Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda.
Jimmy Stewart was one of my heroes. I love watching Jimmy Stewart. I love watching Henry Fonda because they just internalized everything so incredibly well. They played heroes so well to me because they were so sensitive. They were big guys, but sensitive.
By the time he reached age 15, David's ambition seemed less a fantasy and more a possibility. He was now 6'2", and one of the most handsome students at the Lyons Township High School in LaGrange, Illinois, the latest city David's family called home. But despite the great looks that earned him countless female fans, Hasselhoff felt more shy and awkward than ever.
And the first day of school, I had a red sweater on with matching red socks. And I got so pimped by everybody in that school going, "Hey, who's the new guy with the red socks and the red sweater?" And I was like so embarrassed because my socks matched my sweater. And I had skinny legs and I was pimped quite badly in school for it. I was called Dwarf. I was so self-conscious. Girls used to come up to me. I couldn't even have a conversation with a girl. It was strange. I could get up on stage and do 30 minutes of Shakespeare or sing a song, but I could not get in front of my class and give a book report. It was just without acting or without making jokes. I didn't know who I was. The basketball coach came over to me and said, "Oh my God, how could you be 6'2" in the 9th grade? It's fantastic. We'd like you to try out for the team." And on basketball, I said, "I'm not really a basketball player. I'm an actor." He said, "Well, just try out. Just try out." I said, "I don't want to try out, okay?" He said, "Just try out." So I tried out. 20 minutes after I tried out, he said, "You know what? You're an actor." And I said, "You're right. I'm an actor. I was an awful basketball player."
When the 17-year-old graduated in 1969, he entered a world of social and political upheaval. But David didn't heed the call to tune in, turn on, and drop out. He was committed to making it as an actor. He applied to study drama at the prestigious Juilliard School, but poor grades doomed his chances. Instead, he briefly attended the Rochester Academy of Dramatic Arts in Michigan. Then, he headed west to sunny Southern California and enrolled at the California Institute of the Arts in Valencia. But David quickly felt even more out of place.
CalArts was not the school that I expected it to be. It wasn't like some big university that had great theater and great shows and camaraderie and all this. It was more like the University of Eccentrics. It was like my class was Paul Rubenfeld, Pee Wee Herman, Katie Seagal, Scott Harris, Michael Roberts, and was all these just weird diversified teachers, classes. The shows were ooh-wah. There was a lot of drugs floating around, and I didn't do any of that stuff. I was from the Midwest, and I never smoked and I drank beer. They say, "Hey, let's take acid and go play football." I say, "No, let's just go play football. We don't need to take acid." And so I got out of there.
But David did like L.A., and he now set his sights on film or TV work. Unfortunately, his matinee idol looks actually worked against him. No one seemed to take him seriously. At a time when ethnic anti-heroes like Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman dominated the industry. By 1973, 21-year-old David was waiting tables and sending out hundreds of letters to agents and managers. Finally, after a long, frustrating year full of dirty dishes and rejection letters, he managed to book a meeting with a legendary, tough-talking talent scout. Joyce Selznick had helped launch the careers of Tony Curtis and Robert De Niro.
I went in to see her, and she had a cigar in her mouth, a little dog named Shamu, and Shamu bit me on the leg, and she goes, "Can you act?" And I said, "Yeah, I can act." And she goes, "Bull. Nobody, she said, if you're this good-looking and can act, you'd be a star." And I said, "I didn't wait 3 hours for you, Mrs. Selznick, and have your dog bite me here to be insulted." She said, "Sit down and shut up. You're a star, kid." And I went, "Okay."
Selznick landed David his first TV job, a small guest role on the NBC anthology series Police Story. Hasselhoff's career had officially begun. In 1975, the 23-year-old got his biggest acting break yet. The major role of Dr. Snapper Foster on the daytime soap The Young and the Restless. It was a big challenge for the relatively inexperienced actor.
"Chris, you've been gone for months. Time, you say, you needed to come to terms with yourself. Well, I had to come to terms with myself while you've been gone."
Are you saying there's someone else? Working on a soap opera is probably the most difficult job an actor will ever face. It's a long day. It's a lot of dialogue. They can get 40 pages of dialogue a day.
These people that are on the soap operas, and if everybody tries to make fun of them, I say, you know what, you can kiss it, baby. These people are the real actors. These are the ones who are real
workaholics and performers and guys who can really deliver. It takes nerves of steel to get through that stuff.
Making his job even harder was the fact that David was replacing the popular actor William Gray Espy, who created the role, but was now eager to move on.
One of the most difficult tasks a soap actor faces is to replace another very popular actor. It's like you came home and your husband, someone else was in his clothes, or you had different children. It's very disconcerting for the audience.
Ignoring sacks of hate mail, David gave the character his own upbeat, cocky attitude, and quickly won over the viewers.
Well, I think there's an enormous amount of confidence that he had as far as not just the way he looked, but his response to other actors, learning how to work with other actors. I think it was a big learning experience for David, and I think he learned it very well.
Snapper was named Snapper because he snapped at people. You know, his real name was William, but he kind of tended to bark at people a bit. And when David took over, it really was a more charming role.
I was really totally a rookie and really afraid, and they would go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would freak out. And then I finally realized how to program my brain. 5, you're here for a reason. 4, take it easy. 3, believe in yourself. 2, you can do this. 1, let it go, let God, have fun.
You're asking about an affair? No. I just wish you would have let me know. At least you were thinking about coming home. I mean, what'd you expect? Did you just come home and find things the way you left them?
When David was cast The Young Restless, everybody was very excited. We had moved out to our small rural town in Illinois, and it was very big news. Everyone was very excited and very proud.
By 1976, David Hasselhoff had become one of the most popular actors in daytime television, starring as Snapper Foster on The Young and the Restless.
What happens when you become a celebrity or a star is you don't change as much. Everybody changes around you. Suddenly you go home and all your parents' friends are going, "Hey, how are you? Good to see you. What's it like being, oh my, you know." And then there was a big sign outside Salmonock, Illinois saying, "Welcome home, Snapper from The Young and the Restless." And I'm driving back going, how weird is this? And it really kind of messes with your head a little bit.
David worked hard to make his character believable, but he also knew why his female fans were such passionate supporters.
We always had a saying on The Young and the Restless, when the ratings are low, all the clothes go. We used to well, the ratings are low, take off our clothes and get in bed.
He was very shy as a young actor. It was interesting because when he started to do Baywatch, he was half naked all the time. It was very difficult to get him to take his shirt off when I was working with him.
One of the show's most popular storylines featured a love triangle between Snapper, Dr. Casey Reed, and Snapper's estranged wife, Chris, played by actress Lynn Topping.
I wasn't sure you were ever coming home.
But I am home now.
All right, you're home. What am I supposed to do about it? Welcome you with open arms?
David's TV alter ego was unlucky in love, but David wasn't. He and another co-star, Roberta Layton, began dating and were briefly engaged. And David was surprised to discover that his personal romance was winning him an even more devoted following.
Soap opera fans separate the character from the actor, and they might not like to see Snapper getting happily married, but they really get a kick out of real couples meeting and falling in love.
By the time he was 25, David was burning the candle at both ends, partying hard at night and working even harder by day. Hasselhoff was eager to be seen as more than a handsome soap stud. In 1981, after 6 years on daytime TV, the 29-year-old announced he was leaving the show.
I quit. My dad said, "What are you, crazy?" I said, "No, Dad, I'm going to Broadway. I've got $40,000 in my pocket. I'm going to Broadway to follow my dream. I can't do this anymore. I've done 6 years. I've done 890 shows. I'm going to die here."
David's fans didn't want to let him go. And when he appeared at a soap opera convention in Las Vegas, he was mobbed by admirers. Among those who witnessed the feeding frenzy was NBC President Brandon Tartikoff. And by coincidence, Hasselhoff and Tartikoff were on the same flight back to Los Angeles.
Weird guy's looking at me. I turned to the guy next to me and said, "Who's that weird guy looking at me?" That's the head of NBC.
And David, of course, saw Brandon looking at him and was wondering, that's Brandon Tartikoff. I've got to speak to him.
They wouldn't let me get out of my seat because there was a rainstorm and we had to be buckled up. They kept saying, Put your seatbelt on, Mr. Hasselhoff.
So he'd hope to reach him later, tries to catch Brandon, never catches him, is so disappointed thinking, oh, this was my big break and I blew it, and gets a call from NBC the very next day.
Next day the phone rang and was, you're not going to believe this, they're going to test you for Knight Rider.
The role was that of Michael Knight, a secret agent who drives and teams up with a talking, crime-solving car. David channeled all his energy into getting the starring part on the TV drama.
I made everybody call me Michael Knight for 2 weeks. I put it on my answering machine. Hi, so Michael Knight, Michael Knight, Michael Knight. And when I went in for my audition, I got nervous again. I said, excuse me, I need a minute. I went out stage. I am the Knight Rider, I am the Knight Rider. Ah! I said, roll the tape. And I came back and I was absolutely Michael Knight. And I got it.
David won over veteran producer Glenn Larson, whose past hit shows included Battlestar Galactica and The Fall Guy. He eventually beat out actor Don Johnson for the part, but only after a rocky start with studio executives.
They said, you have to go back and start over. I said, well, wait a minute. What do you mean they didn't like anybody? He says, they didn't like anybody. I said, well, what was wrong with Hasselhoff? 3 hours go by, phone rings, and he said, yeah. I said, okay, you got Hasselhoff. Wow, there's conviction, man. They must have loved him.
What's all this? Looks like Darth Vader's bathroom. It is a one-of-a-kind car, Mr. Long. Operated entirely by microprocessors, which make it virtually impossible for it to be involved in any kind of mishap or collision. Unless, of course, specifically so ordered by its pilot. Pilot?
Sharing the screen with David and co-star Patricia McPherson was Kit, a tricked-out Trans Am with artificial intelligence. His voice was provided by stage and screen veteran William Daniels. Daniels was just the sort of serious and respected actor David wanted to be. But although they shared nearly every scene, it was only thanks to the magic of editing.
It's not as if we had William Daniels, the great William Daniels, with a microphone off stage feeding him his lines. It's usually a script girl or a PA or someone is just throwing him the lines and it's usually badly, you know. Well, David, what do you think?
Smart aleck car. Okay.
They officially met for the first time at a cast party.
It's true. My life is so bizarre. I was just sitting there, and some guy goes, "Oh my God, Michael Knight!" And he said, "Well, what happened? Where's Kit?" And all of a sudden I hear this. "I'm right over here, Michael." And I went, "What?" And there's William Daniels.
Hey, this is your comedy co-star, and everybody assumed that they did this stuff together.
When I sat down, I said, "Well, hello, Mr. Daniels." He goes, "Well, hello, David." And the guy goes, "It's Michael and Kit."
I gotta admit, this car's something else.
In September of 1982, Knight Rider, starring David Hasselhoff, debuted as a 2-hour special on NBC. David was stung by vicious reviews. He was dubbed a clone of Tom Selleck's successful Magnum P.I. character. One critic called him a hood ornament.
I don't think anyone takes a shot and doesn't feel it, and I know David takes shots and definitely feels it. It always hurts a little bit when people make fun of you.
I'm a lot like a lot of guys who are afraid to admit it, that we're really oversensitive. And when people say things, you carry them around for a long time.
But the show's fantastic ratings, #1 in its time slot, helped soften the blow.
Anytime you give me a bad review, take it to the people on the street. They'll love it.
We came as soon as we got Kit's signal. It's my alpha circuit, Bonnie.
Your alpha circuit? Kit, the only way that you could damage that is to do something stupid like towing another car?
Bonnie, no comment. You're 1 in a million, pal.
I totally underestimated that this wasn't just a good 8 o'clock action show. I got calls the day after the screening from my doctor and lawyer, my fireman, everybody had an identification and a love affair with cars. They liked the car. They wouldn't have liked it if David hadn't been good with it.
The whole family would watch. You'd get the boys or rock and roll, the girls. for the young guy and the parents because it was funny. Because Kit was like Clifton Webb, you know, it was like Life with Father. Michael.
Whoa! That's a close one.
I can handle... Well, these computer things are just a waste of time anyway.
As the show settled into its groove, David quickly felt at home with a cast and crew that became a second family.
This was a rock and roll crew, a bunch of guys who liked to drink and liked to drive fast, and we had a hot rock and roll Knight Rider man's cool show, right? Oh my God, what a job.
When we were at Universal, he came in the makeup door, grabbed me out of the makeup trailer, said, let's go raid the trams. And those were the tours that used to go around the studios, and we followed one of them. So we get in the Kit car, and he drives up there, and he's doing these donuts, and we're following one of the trams that goes through a ride.
And we go to the tunnel, the ice tunnel revolves.
And we got stuck in the ride.
All of a sudden, the car starts to go like this, and everyone's screaming, ah!
The short story is, the man had to come and free us and shoot us out and let us go. Being he was a Knight Rider, he got away with it.
David, as enthusiastic and energetic as any 11-year-old, quickly earned a new following.
He was Santa Claus to kids. I can remember seeing kids run up to David from across the other side of the set and just wrap their arms around David's legs and hang on and not let go.
Knight Rider was extremely popular with kids, so suddenly he became a kind of breakout star to kids and young teens. He was on lunchboxes and on posters and all of that kind of stuff. Merchandising was a big part of that show. I mean, what kid wouldn't want to own the Knight Rider car?
They did every possible variation on what you could do. Figures that could be ejected out of the car, and then the action figures of David. No, it's a producer's dream and a studio's dream to have those things.
David got a big kick out of his youngest fans, but being a hero could also be heartbreaking. In 1984, David was approached by Dream Makers Incorporated, a charity that granted last wishes to terminally ill children.
This boy wants to meet Michael Knight from the Knight Rider. I said, oh, cool, send him over. Came over. This kid comes up. His name is Randy Armstrong. And he was this really good-looking 16-year-old with short hair because he lost most of it to chemotherapy, and he had leukemia. And Randy, we took him for a ride in the Knight Rider car, and we spun him every which way but loose, and we took him on jumps, and we got him the sound guys, let him hear the sound. We put him behind the camera. About 6 months later, Randy passed away, and they said, well, Randy would like to send you a picture and a letter. And in this picture was a picture of him in his casket, buried in his Knight Rider hat and jacket, with a letter saying, Dear David, please tell the cast and crew of Knight Rider that you taught me there was more to life than pain. And please go out and see other kids. You know, you guys are truly real heroes. And then the whole cast and crew just broke down, and we couldn't even finish the day. We wrapped early. So since that day, I opened the door. Any kid, anywhere, anytime. And we saw thousands.
Soon, David was booked solid at charity events and work, with little time left for a personal life. In his rare free time, he would go out partying to release the pressure.
I stayed up all night long until I had this horrific amount of energy.
In 1983, David channeled that energy into a new relationship with 26-year-old soap opera star Catherine Hickland. The two met when they were both presenters at the Daytime Emmy Awards. With his usual determination, David pursued the bright and beautiful actress for months until she finally agreed to see him. But David found it hard to shoehorn a relationship into his busy life. Increasingly consumed by work and charity causes, 32-year-old David turned to Catherine as a grounding force in his life. And on March 24th, they were married in the romantic seaside town of Carmel, California.
David and Catherine were just beautiful people. It was like Barbie and Ken. You know, they were so California. They had this glow about them. She's a vivacious, beautiful, smart girl.
The glamorous couple set up housekeeping in a mansion in the Hollywood Hills with the requisite pool, jacuzzi, and screening room. But David couldn't fight the nagging feeling that his small screen success was taking him further away from his dreams of becoming a respected actor and a singer. 33-year-old had been acting for the cameras for 10 years. It was fun, but he missed the thrill he had gotten singing on stage. So in 1984, David jumped at the chance to record an album with music producer Joe Diamond.
David saw my gold records on the wall, and he said, "Are you in the music business?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I want to sing so bad." And I don't know why, he had a cassette in his pocket. And he said, "Can you listen to this?" And I put it on. I said, "That's not bad, David. How come you never recorded?" And he told me he got turned down by every label, that nobody thought that he could do it. I said, "You know something? Just from the impact of Knight Rider, you should be able to sell 1 million records."
Diamond put up $40,000 of his own money to produce an album, and David went to work recording The Night Rocker.
We were under tremendous pressure. I mean, we were going 16-hour days. David was a really, really hard worker, and he was hard on himself. He really strove for perfection.
I am the night rocker. I wanna rock you all night long. I am the night rocker. I wanna lay you in my song.
The album came out, and to everybody's disappointment, didn't do well at all. Here I have the star of one of the biggest shows in the world, Knight Rider. And I just thought to myself, how can I miss? We missed.
The album's failure dealt a major blow to David. To make matters worse, the actor's heavy workload was putting a strain on his marriage to Catherine. Then, in 1986, NBC canceled Knight Rider after 4 seasons and 90 episodes. David was stunned and bitterly disappointed, not only for himself, but for his fellow cast members and crew.
The show was still a #1 show. We went down when other shows like Hardcastle and McCormick and other action series were going down that were still on top. It was something that I think he thought and we thought could be worked into a different storyline to keep it going.
When it was canceled, I was like, I went home and cried. I said, oh my God, this was the greatest role ever.
Suddenly, the 34-year-old didn't know when or if he'd get another paycheck.
After Knight Rider, no one would hire him for a long time. And I think he got a guest spot on a Perry Mason TV movie, and he was really grateful for it.
I saw casting breakdowns that said David Hasselhoff type. I say, here he is. I look just like him. They said, no, not you. Everybody knows you as Knight Rider.
David's fortune was draining away as he hunted desperately for work, and his marriage to Catherine Hickland didn't survive the emotionally fraught time. In 1987, the couple decided to divorce after 2.5 years of marriage.
Catherine and David seemed to be a really well-matched couple, but Catherine's a very hard-working person. That may have been difficult because the two were working so much at the same time together.
And we didn't give the marriage the attention that we should have, but we parted friends, and which is good.
By 1987, David Hasselhoff's life, personally and professionally, was at a standstill. His marriage to Catherine Hickland was over. Knight Rider had been canceled, and his dream of a music career had seemed to have hit a dead end. But that summer, David's fortunes began to change after a chance meeting with a young Austrian fan who'd won lunch with the star through a magazine contest.
She came over and we had lunch, and I was being gracious and nice and sweet. And then she drove around in my little mini Knight Rider car, wrecked it. I said, that's perfect, you wrecked my only memento of Knight Rider. And she goes, how's your music? I said, yeah, my music, Knight Rocker album, I sold 7 copies here in America. And she goes, well, it's #1 in my country. And I said, oh, really? Where's your country? She goes, Austria. I go, oh, great. Where's Austria? And she goes, I show you. And so I look on the map, and here's a tiny little country about the side of Rhode Island. And I went, ding, opening.
Knight Rider had gone into syndication in Europe that year, and the show and its star were phenomenally popular. Not only in Austria, but in Germany, too.
So Sony decided to re-release the album over there. And it was just one of those fluky things, just exploded. in Germany and Austria.
Call up Herbie Fector in Austria. Hello, I'm David Schwartz. I represent David Hasselhoff. Is Night Rocker #1 in your country? Yes, it is. What about a tour with Mr. Hasselhoff and the Knight Rider car? Figuring if they don't come to see David Hasselhoff, they'll come and see the car. He goes, I'll call you back in 24 hours. He calls me back and says, I can put that together. Called my manager, Jan McCormick, and said, Jan, I think I just got us booked in Austria. She goes, oh, take over. I made up this phony name, take over. Jan calls me back and says, I got you $100,000, you're on tour, but you only go out in 2 weeks. Can you put a show together in 2 weeks? I said, if he can book it, I can go out. Put a whole show together. We pre-taped the whole show and went on an airplane, flew over, called my dad, said, Dad, you're doing merchandising, hats, T-shirts, I don't know, whatever the hell they put at concerts, posters, anything. He says, I'm on it. I'll jump on an airplane.
So it's perfect for David, because he was going over to Germany and making 60 grand a night, driving on stage with Kit. And he was loving it, and all of a sudden he was doing what he always wanted to do, and that's sing.
For the next year, David toured Europe non-stop.
I was in Amsterdam at a hotel, and I couldn't leave my hotel because there were 500 people screaming something. And I went to the guy at the front desk and said, what's going on? And he said, Hasselhoff. And I thought that was sort of a Dutch word for something exciting. And it turned out David Hasselhoff was staying at the hotel I was staying at. I soon discovered that in Amsterdam, David Hasselhoff is the Rolling Stones.
David had fans stateside, too. Top NBC executive Brandon Tartikoff hadn't forgotten how much money Knight Rider had made for his network.
I had just seen Brandon on the streets of Beverly Hills, and he said, it's time for you to come back. I said, yeah, find me a vehicle.
Tartikoff put in a good word for David with the producers of a new primetime NBC show called Baywatch. The series was the brainchild of former lifeguard Greg Bonin and fellow producers Michael Burke and Douglas Schwartz. They were looking for the right actor to play Mitch Buchanan, sexy lifeguard and father figure to his staff.
We had a hard time finding a Mitch Buchanan, the guy that was going to lead our Baywatch lifeguards, that family out into water rescues and action every week.
The producers considered Lorenzo Lamas and former Dukes of Hazzard star Tom Wopat before David came in to read for the part.
David really comes across as the epitome of the movie star. Because he has drop-dead gorgeous looks and he's so tall. But there's something about David that is very commanding. And he brings a lot of himself to any part that he does.
David was torn about whether or not he even wanted the part. But his longtime manager, Jan McCormick, loved the role, and she urged him to accept it.
I didn't want to wear a bathing suit because I was still self-conscious about being in a bathing suit. And I got in my car, and I called my manager, and I said, it's Knight Rider running down the beach, and in slow motion, it's just this, you know what, it's going to be a huge success. Go get it.
Baywatch, starring David, Parker Stevenson, and former Playboy playmate Erica Eleniak, went on the air April 23rd, 1989.
You'll pass up one victim for another one. Not in my water or anywhere. You just roar because I outswam you, mate. Saving lives isn't part of competition on my beach. You step out of line one more time, you got me to answer to.
Critics blasted the show. One called it the silliest show of the season. But this time, David didn't let it bother him.
Every time I got a terrible review, I'd say, guys, we're getting horrible reviews on Baywatch. It's going to be around for years. We got horrible reviews on Knight Rider. We're a big hit.
In its first weeks on the air, Baywatch wasn't a smash like Knight Rider, but it finished regularly in the top 20.
David really did bring a big audience to NBC. We actually had doubled their ratings in that time slot, Friday nights, 8 to 9 o'clock. It was the highest rated show on Friday night since Knight Rider had gone off the air.
David's personal life was also looking up. He reconnected with 25-year-old Pamela Bach, an actress he'd met years earlier when she guest starred on Knight Rider.
We saw each other at the nightclub, and we talked, and we kept talking. He called bright and early next morning, and we talked for a whole week, every day, a couple of times, and he had asked me out for a Friday night. And we've been together ever since that first day.
Not just another blonde babe, Pamela was a down-to-earth and loving woman who'd grown up in a family that took in dozens of foster children. David saw the chance to settle down and form a family like the one he'd grown up in. On December 9th, 1989, David and Pamela were married at the Little Brown Church in Studio City. But David didn't have time to slow down for a honeymoon. Instead, he and Pamela traveled to Europe, where David was now working closely with music producer Jack White. White thought Hasselhoff was the perfect artist to sing White's rock anthem, Looking for Freedom.
When I went to Germany and sang Looking for Freedom, there was so much love. I was singing songs like Limbo Dance, Limbo Cool, you know, and Is Everybody Happy, and Everybody's Sunshine. And I was going, these songs are a little trite, but they loved them.
It was like the Beatles walking off the plane with just thousands and thousands of people there to greet him. And he loved that. He embraced that.
He sings like he acts, in bold strokes and in ways that appeal to people who speak many languages.
I've been looking for freedom.
The new album's title track, Looking for Freedom, couldn't have been recorded at a better time. As fate would have it, the song was released just as East Germany was gaining its own freedom after decades of Soviet occupation. As a result, Looking for Freedom became the unofficial anthem for young Germans celebrating the end of communist rule, and sold over 1 million copies.
Lyrically, they connected with it. David was a huge star over there, and he was at the right song in the right place at the right time.
I headed down the track, my baggage on my back. I left the city far behind. Walking down that road with my heavy load, trying to find some peace of mind.
On New Year's Eve, 1989, David was even invited to perform his hit anthem on top of the crumbling Berlin Wall.
The Dick Clark show of Germany is called the Sylvester Show. They want me to sing on New Year's Eve. I said, only if I can sing on the wall. It was a total bluff. They called back and they said, yes. I went, what? So I went and I sang in a crane above 1 million people from East and West Germany when the wall was still up, and they were singing, I've Been Looking for Freedom in English. And I took over my wife, who was 7 months pregnant, hoisted her up on the wall with a bunch of my buddies from college. We all stayed at the Berlin Hilton. I took a videotape because I said nobody will believe this back in L.A.
One morning in June, some 20 years ago, I was born a rich man's son. I had everything that money could buy, but freedom I had none. I've been looking for freedom.
So here you have this guy who flew over from the Baywatch set, stand on the Berlin Wall in front of, the sea of people, like a crowd I've never seen that big before, singing Looking for Freedom as a national anthem for bringing freedom to Germany and bringing down the wall. It was very emotional. And he brought everybody in the Baywatch company a piece of the Berlin Wall back.
So when people say there's no God or things are not connected, I just look at what's happened in my life and how this man from Knight Rider happens to be #1, and the wall came down, and then I got to sing, and the song was Looking for Freedom. So it just, just right place at the right time.
So
by 1990, David Hasselhoff once again felt professionally secure. He had a huge music career in Europe and the successful TV show Baywatch at home.
I'd drive over the hill, I'd see the beach, and I just go, thank you, God. Wow, what a job.
David was always happy to be working, but he wasn't pleased with the show's creative direction.
And the first year, it was murder at Malibu Beach. 7 people died in the first, 4 episodes. I said, no one's going to want to come to friggin' Malibu, guys. We're killing everybody. It's supposed to be out saving lives.
The show's first season came to a close in the spring of 1990. Ratings had been solid, if not stellar, and Baywatch seemed to be a good bet for renewal.
All right.
David started touring Europe full-time and eagerly prepared for the birth of his first child.
Here I am, full-on pregnant, going country to country with my husband, who is just phenomenal, and he's singing. And I had a cutoff time that all pregnant women have about flying. Well, I was early. I was coming home way before my little cutoff time. And the steward, very German, well, via, you're flying right now. I said, I really don't think it really matters. I need a doctor. I said, I'm in labor.
Tonight's show is dedicated to my wife, Pamela, who is in the hospital having the baby right now.
My first child, Taylor Ann, was born when I was on stage in Frankfurt.
Yeah. We just had a baby girl!
The most vivid memory that I have is walking off stage from Switzerland, flying home after this huge tour in Germany. And Pamela was in the hospital, and she says, "Here's your daughter." I went, "Whoa!" And suddenly it was like this little football, and I went, "Oh my God!" And immediately, that took priority over everything.
But when David came home from Germany to spend time with Pamela and their new baby, the actor was confronted with some bad news about Baywatch.
We expected the show to go to a second season when Grant Tinker, who is the head of the studio, told us that he could no longer deficit finance Baywatch. When he did inform NBC of that, they promptly canceled the show, and we were out of business. And we were all shocked.
Again, David felt responsibility, not only for himself and his family, but for his many co-workers now out of work. David braced himself for another grueling job hunt. To his surprise, the show's producers approached him with a plan to resuscitate Baywatch, a plan that led to David taking a leading role in the show's production.
We needed David's help in relaunching the show. We gave him the executive producer credit. We originally thought it was going to be something that would appeal to his ego, and he actually took it so seriously that he actually became one of the four of us. There were 4 executive producers.
You got Doug, Michael, Greg, and David. Okay, Michael is the head writer. Doug is going to sell everybody on how this is going to be a phenomenal show. Greg was the blood and guts producer who could get blood out of his stone and shoot this thing for $400,000 less than what we had on the network. And I was the front guy, oversaw all the scripts, the stories, did all the publicity, kept the cast happy, and kind of co-directed everything kind of behind the scenes.
The plan was to pre-sell the show independently to hundreds of TV stations around the world.
I was constantly going around the country selling the show, flying to Philadelphia to appear at a bowling alley because I knew that I could sell 20 stations if I appeared at this bowling alley. So I'd do anything to keep the show going.
Once again, David's European fans came through when he needed them most. Germany became one of the key financial players in the show's relaunching.
That German musical career was instrumental in supporting his ability to put Baywatch back on the air after a short stint on NBC, because the German audience alone was willing to pay enough to support it if no one else wanted it.
Some of the show's original actors had moved on to new projects. David was heavily involved in recasting key roles, like that of Mitch's son, Hobie. 10-year-old Jeremy Jackson was one potential candidate.
I got the call that I had the audition. I didn't want to go. I wanted to go hang out and play with all my friends. And my mom said, David Hasselhoff might be there. You might get to meet him. And Knight Rider was my all-time favorite show. David Hasselhoff was so cool, you know what I mean? And so I was like, okay, cool.
Jackson got the part, and the new syndicated version of Baywatch went into production in July of 1991.
We built our own studio. We built the sets, the casting, the post, the pre, the makeup, the wardrobe, everything. So it was like we were our own little studio, and it was a blast. And it was rock and roll, nonstop, fun, hard work to where we go, oh my God, the show we're like 4 minutes short. Greg would say, go shoot somebody. Shoot a girl in slow motion. Find a girl with a really nice backside and shoot her. And that's how the montages came, because we ran out of money.
Tight schedules and tighter budgets meant producer Hasselhoff would do just about anything to get the right shots at the right price.
He insisted on doing a lot of his own stunts because when you're shooting somebody in the water, all you see is their face and their head. It's very hard to double somebody in that position. So we would have David in fire, we would have David in explosions, we'd have David in sinking boats, we'd have him hanging from a helicopter. He did all of that without ever complaining.
By the end of the second season, the show usually won its time slot everywhere viewers could see it. But the producers knew they needed to get the series on more stations to make a real profit. When sexy lead actress Erika Eleniak decided not to sign on for a third season, the Baywatch gang needed a spectacular replacement to lure new buyers. They chose a former Playboy playmate, best known for her role on the sitcom Home Improvement, Canadian bombshell Pamela Anderson.
She walked in for the audition. She was very sexy. She had a very revealing shirt on. Several of the other people that were in the room were admiring the shirt. I was going, why is she wearing that shirt? She doesn't need that shirt. She's so sexy. She's so fun. She had such great charisma.
He was always someone I could ask for advice, and was very sweet and protective. I'd say he was very protective of me, and just a good friend.
It was Pam's first episode. She had never acted. She was scared to death. So David took her aside and worked with her as the actress, made her feel comfortable, and they had a really good bond.
You a lot of sick moose around?
Oh my God, Mitch, I'm sorry. I was just so surprised to see you standing there.
Not as surprised as I was.
For another new character, Mitch's love interest, Lieutenant Stephanie Holden, David helped choose former model Alexandra Paul.
I'm one of those people who gets nervous in auditions, but he has such a friendly, down-to-earth personality that I immediately felt at ease. I felt good, too, because I'm tall. And so is he.
He was the dad of the show. You had actors that were just new to L.A., that were 20, 21, 22 years old, that had very little, if any, experience, and David would really take them under his wing.
We're on a water raft. There's cameras on the raft. There's all the equipment on the raft. Me and David, we're filming scenes, and I had this pocket knife, and I was messing around with it. I was 10 years old. We're going down a rapid, and I popped the raft. David was the only guy I told. I'm like, David, I popped a hole in the raft. We're sinking.
We're losing air!
So he puts his foot over the hole in the raft, covers it, and didn't tell anybody. He just sat there and let it sink. So we're all sinking. Nobody knows why. We lost the camera in the water, all the microphones, hundreds of thousands of dollars equipment, and he covered up for me.
The new cast clicked, and the curvaceous Pamela became a media favorite, generating more publicity for the show.
The show was so popular, and him specifically, that we had to have that crime tape around the set. And at one point, we had bodyguards escorting us from our trailers to the set.
David knew firsthand what a head rush sudden fame could be. He made sure to set a good example for his young castmates.
David was so professional. He always knew his lines. He always was there on time, and he never complained. The other actors couldn't, throw any star fits or anything because it would just look dumb.
He taught me about business, how to go about owning your show and merchandising and things like that. And he did tell me, because next show you do, you should own and produce, because you have strong ideas and you're funny and you know what you are best at.
As a businessman, there's nobody smarter than David Hasselhoff. If he thinks that it's worthwhile, he can do it. He may think, well, I have to do Monday and Tuesday, but I could do this Saturday and Sunday. He'll be there. His energy is just boundless.
By 1992, Baywatch, starring David Hasselhoff, was on the air in over 94% of the U.S., and it had an even more devoted following overseas, with its tales of beautiful people performing heroic deeds on the beach. Baywatch captured a popular international view of America.
I got the job with President Clinton. And he turned to me and said, "You think Baywatch would ever be as big as it is?" And I said, "I never thought a president of the United States would ever utter the two syllables Baywatch." But he did. President Clinton liked Baywatch. Wonder why.
It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that show out. So Hasselhoff, it became a really big star around the world because the show is a show that's easy to understand in any language.
Oh, excuse me.
Are you always wet?
As often as possible.
And I think the weather had a lot to do with it around the world. When you're freezing your off in Europe, you turn on, you see all these good-looking babes and this beautiful sunshine, and here comes the hero David Hasselhoff. You know, it was fun. It was escapism.
In the current Guinness World Book of Records, Baywatch is listed as the most watched series in the history of television. A lot of that is because of David Hasselhoff's popularity in the world.
Between his Baywatch following and European music fans, David was now a huge international star.
Mom, Dad, she can talk! Say it again, Lise. Bark! Bark, 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 bark. I'm her first word. Lisa, can you say Mommy? Mommy. Can you say David Hasselhoff? David Hasselhoff.
I remember Lionel Richie went on television one time. We were on The Tonight Show, and he said he went over to Germany. All the fans came up to him and said, "Do you know David Hasselhoff?" And he said, "You're really famous in Germany." And I said, "Yeah." My last house I lived in, my next door neighbor just moved in, and he knocked on my door, and he said, he's a director, and he said, "Are you famous in Germany?" I said, "Yeah, kind of." "Why?" He said, "There are Germans in my trees." And I look up there going, "Hello, hello!" Like fans that climbed up in his trees to look over the fence into my yard. And I said, come here, Vita. They came down and a little tea.
I think there's a certain amiable quality about the guy, that sort of eagerness to please and give the people what they want that translates. And he just has that sort of bold stroke sort of charisma that connects with people.
We're basically on our little beach in Malibu doing the show ourselves without a studio, without a network. It was just our little show. We had no idea that when the cast first went with David Hasselhoff to London, that there would be probably 10,000 people. They had to barricade the streets. There was a near riot.
At the age of 40, David's career had never been hotter. And with the birth of his second daughter, Haley, the committed father saw his fame as a responsibility.
When you are the Baywatch hero, and you make a mistake and it gets publicized, it affects your family. And that's the responsibility that I have. I have a responsibility to my mother and my father, my wife and my children, and the people that I love, to not embarrass them. Is it really worth doing that and having it go all the way around and affect someone that you love? No, it's not. So it keeps me in check.
As Baywatch moved into its 4th and 5th seasons, David's co-workers were often astounded by their leader's boundless energy and drive.
You couldn't give David a candy bar because David's energy was already naturally so high. Give him a candy bar, forget it.
He drinks a lot of Red Bull and a lot of coffee, but I don't know, and nobody around him knows how he gets it.
David was always the first one in the water. He was always leading the troops. When the girls didn't want to go in, David jumped in.
He always told me that pretty much if I wanted to get something done right, I had to do it myself.
But Hasselhoff, the role model, always made time for the important business of goofing off.
Severed heads in people's trailers. He did that once to me, a dummy head. It was like cut off, and I opened my closet in the trailer, and there was a head in there. Saran wrap over the toilets. He's always off camera making faces at me and making noises, and the rabbit faces, what he always used to do off camera, go like this while I'm reading my lines. But then I wasn't allowed to do it to him.
David may not have always taken the show or himself too seriously, but as a father of 2, he was determined that the show remain family entertainment and not softcore jiggle vision.
Most people perceive Baywatch as a TNA show. They remember Pamela Anderson's heaving breasts in slow motion running down the beach, or Yasmin Bleeth, or Carmen Electra, or Donna D'Errico, or so many of the beautiful women that we've had on the show. But the fact is, David really looked to the stories to tell a family story in a family show, because the girls and the beautiful bodies were really just the icing on the cake.
I think we kind of went overboard on the babes this season. I tried to get more family stories in there. But
Me and David got a lot of fan mail. They were really loving the relationship between me and him, and the trials of a teenager and a single dad.
Both sentimental and sexy, Baywatch was a guilty pleasure for millions of Americans.
Nobody made more fun of Baywatch than us. We had a blast. We laughed all the way. every day. We say, look at these reviews. We say, you know, my favorite one was Howard Stern. He says, do you actually read those scripts? I said, of course not. Why would I read the scripts? We just go there, we just make it all up.
Having rescued Baywatch, David now focused his attention on relaunching a singing career in the United States. David released his third album, You Are Everything, in 1993.
The tradition of actors trying to make it in music in America it's a pretty horrific one. We tend to pigeonhole people in one area.
He was always, again, trying to merge his singing career. That's what he had the most passion about.
Watched him perform for like 3 hours, just energy, powerhouse from beginning to end. I can remember being backstage in Germany. I think it was the Olympic Stadium in Germany. And 15,000 people, all lighters lit, and they're all chanting, David, David.
In 1994, David decided to produce a pay-per-view TV special that would introduce Americans to David Hasselhoff, rock star.
Because I was so popular over there, we decided to bring it to America on a pay-per-view special. We went to Donald Trump's hotel in Atlantic City, did my live show from Germany, live to pay-per-view, flew the band in, did the whole thing.
Thank you all for watching. Tonight is for you.
David invested his own money in the show, and on June 17th, David Hasselhoff and his Baywatch friends went live over the airwaves.
Hello, America!
He had no idea that at exactly the same time, O.J. Simpson, suspected of murdering his wife and her friend, was fleeing from L.A. police in his white Bronco on live TV.
All of us were watching O.J. going down the freeway. And even though we're David's biggest fans and we're his family, we're all watching O.J. If we're watching O.J., who's watching David?
Good night, ladies and gentlemen, thank you!
David came off stage and saw the low-speed chase on all the televisions in the green room.
I said, don't tell me that's live. And he goes, that's live. 93 million people watched the O.J. Simpson chase. 30,000 watched Hasselhoff, and we lost a bundle of money. I guess it wasn't meant to be.
David came into the makeup trailer the next Monday, and he was incredibly disappointed. I mean, of all nights to put on a pay-per-view show, that was the one night in probably the last 10 years, the worst night to have anything else on TV. But the great thing about David is that he was able to laugh and really make a great story out of it.
Ain't that horrible? I mean, but that's what happened. And he goes, you know, it's just my luck.
If he couldn't get the respect he wanted in America as a singer, David decided he'd get it playing more diverse roles as an actor. In November of 1994, Hasselhoff starred as a murderous thief in the made-for-television movie, Avalanche.
That was a character that I internalized. When I was on Avalanche, you really had to go deep in there, so basically you could get everything you ever wanted to say to somebody. Every time you had to eat it when somebody was being rude or somebody was being a racist or a bad review, I kind of internalized that and used it in my look. So every time I came out, I could say, really? You want to mess with me? Really? They go cut and they go, God, you're weird. I go, boy, that felt so good. Because you could do it and get away with it.
Unstoppable as ever, David released his fourth album, Is Everybody Happy, in 1995. Once again, it was a smash in Europe, especially in Germany.
Americans just love to make fun of him, and it really irritates me. It's so, like why? Most of them haven't even heard him sing. In Europe, they love him. They have the utmost of respect for him.
By 1995, star and executive producer David Hasselhoff had made millions off his investment in Baywatch. The actor felt compelled to share his good fortune with others, especially kids who hadn't gotten the breaks he had.
We did the Camp Baywatch Starlight Foundation. I remember a thing he was doing called Race for Life. He always had kids coming and giving them like friendship bracelets and eating lunch with them and cool stuff like that. I think he also knows that if you give freely what's been given to you, it's the way to keep it coming back.
Always do your best, keep a positive attitude, never give up, but, and say a prayer and say thanks for what you've got. And appreciate what we've got. We forget about that. You forget about the kids in the wheelchair. You forget about the dying kids. You forget about everything. You wonder why I'm not going first class. Why am I not going first class? Why do I have to sit in the seat? It's crazy. Look at what I've got.
Back at work, David was aching for a creative challenge. In 1995, he attempted to spin off Baywatch into a new show, Baywatch Nights, the after-hours adventures of Mitch Buchanan, Private Eye. The show was loosely inspired by one of David's favorite TV series, I Spy.
David Hasselhoff always wanted to show and prove that the reason that Baywatch was successful was not the beach, not the babes, not the bikinis, but for him. And it was his audience, and he wanted to drive a red Ferrari, get the girl in the end, but be a private eye.
We're trying to create something that is, when you watch Baywatch, you turn on television and you see Baywatch, you know it's Baywatch simply because of the style of the show, with the montages of music and the setting. We're trying to do that with Baywatch Nights, but at night.
Ratings for the first season were disappointing, and the second season, which had a supernatural bent lifted from the successful X-Files series, fared even worse. David reluctantly pulled the plug on Baywatch Nights after 44 episodes.
It's very disappointing to have a show and it not make it, especially when you're in such the public eye and you so publicly fail.
David still had to rely on Baywatch for his creative fulfillment, which wasn't always easy.
Baywatch went the gamut from, serious stories about rescues to not so serious stories about monsters in the sea.
I directed a show called El Nino, and it was about a 25-foot runaway eel that had escaped from a aquarium and grown in the sewers of Malibu. And Hobie and another lifeguard were trapped in a cave underwater. David Hasselhoff had to go down there and save him, but before he could save the two of them, he had to first wrestle and fight the 25-foot eel.
There's a huge giant eel, and it's supposed to be attacking us. David's in the off camera with this huge giant eel, like pretending to make out with it, and like pretending it's biting his neck and all this crazy stuff. It was funny.
David signed on to a 3-year deal to continue as star and producer of Baywatch. But the show's creative well seemed to be running dry, and David looked for other challenges. In 1998, he starred opposite Lisa Rinna in the Fox TV movie Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., based on the popular Marvel comic about a super spy who saves the world.
Von Strucker's dead. I killed him myself.
Yesterday, Hydra stormed Trinity Base. They stole Von Strucker's body, and they killed Clay in the process.
Damn.
I'm sorry about Clay, Nick, but it looks like Hydra's trying to send you a message.
Looks like I heard it. I do not intend to spend the last few hours of my life on this planet in the helicarrier sickbay. I'll get that vampire's blood if I have to suck it from her neck.
David saw potential for a series featuring his hard-boiled character, but the ratings weren't high enough to justify a show.
Real. David was looking to do something different from Baywatch, and so therefore we made a deal with David to only do 6 episodes a year out of 22.
I was always working on television, and I said, I'm getting old here. I got to go, eventually get to Broadway, so I walked away from Baywatch on the 11th season. And I was in Hawaii, and I said, aloha, mahalo. It was a great ride.
For his last regular series appearance, David went out with a bang, although he didn't know it at the time.
David went back to Los Angeles after the episode was filmed. He then months and months later, got a call from a reporter saying, I just heard that your character on Baywatch was killed. How do you feel no longer being a living member of the Baywatch cast? And he said, what are you talking about? My character never got filmed. Well, it turned out that my partner, Greg Bonin, who was one of the executive producers, took a stunt double and filmed a new sequence which killed them at the end of the sequence, and they just find Mitch Buchanan's floating dive suit there, and that was the end of David Hasselhoff, very unceremoniously.
With Baywatch finally behind him, 48-year-old David Hasselhoff was free to fulfill a dream he'd had since childhood. That of becoming a Broadway star.
People constantly underestimate David, and going on Broadway was his way of really showing what he was made out of, and I think he showed them.
David replaced rocker Sebastian Bach in the lead role of the hit musical Jekyll and Hyde. The show, by composer Frank Wildhorn and lyricist Leslie Bricusse, had been running for over 3 years and was scheduled to close in 3 months.
I said, I want the role. I want the role that's going to kick my... I want the role. And it took me 40 years to get there. And it was well worth the wait. When you see your billboard on Times Square, 3 stories high, it's a pretty emotional moment. So when my parents came for opening night, they said, I called the Marriott and said, could you get my parents in? They said, well, oh yes, we'll give them the biggest suite, the top floor for nothing. I said, no. I want them in a small room overlooking my billboard. And we came in, put them in a room and said, hey Mom, Dad, guess that. They went, whoa! I said, all those acting classes you took me to, all those singing classes, all the theater, everything, it paid off.
On October 31st of 2000, David Hasselhoff finally made his debut on The Great White Way.
The opening night for me on Broadway, I didn't think I could get through the first note. With, lost in the darkness, silence surrounds you. And I was like, God, let me get those first notes out because I'm on Broadway, and this was a dream that I had since I was 8 years old.
All that you are is a face in the mirror. I close my eyes and you disappear. I'm what you face when you face in the mirror. Long as you live, I will still be here.
I think for David to finally be on Broadway was a culmination of many years of dreams and hard work. He was very excited to be able to perform. He loves to sing, he loves musical theater, and I think he described it as finally returning to his roots, which is many years ago, starting the musical theater when he was back in Georgia.
All that you are is the end of a nightmare. All that you are is a dying scream. After tonight I shall end this demon's dream. This is not a dream, my friend, and it will never end. This one is a nightmare that goes on.
I didn't know how David was going to be on Broadway. I had never seen him do that before. And brilliant, honest to God, is the word that comes to mind, because he truly was.
Being on stage is the best thing I can say. It's like being a quarterback. When I was doing Jekyll and Hyde, I was a quarterback every night, and it was Sunday night football or Monday night football every time I went out there. Hut, let's go, rock and roll. And you went out and you had 2.5 hours of just intensity, and the applause, it's over. And you go back home and say, I can't possibly do this tomorrow. It's impossible. At 5 o'clock, I would have such anxiety. I say, I got to go lay down. 7 o'clock, I'd slowly put on the makeup. It's like putting on your pads and getting ready. And 8 o'clock was a big game. Wow, what an honor.
Because I've come a long way from the beach and the talking car. And it took me a long time to get here. But I'm not leaving.
David's 9-week run in Jekyll and Hyde was a personal triumph and a career high point, but the end of the show's run left him feeling empty and anxious. Decades of working hard and playing hard had caught up with him. His 24/7 lifestyle could no longer be maintained by a man approaching 50. And alcohol was no longer a source of recreation. It was a serious problem that threatened everything David had worked so hard to achieve.
I loved to drink. It was fun. Life to me is about fun. I was having too much fun, but I was using it to medicate on kind of a, oh, woe is me, I have a couple drinks, I feel better. Sometimes, subconsciously, I don't feel I'm deserving of all my success. So I was kind of trying to bring myself down.
In July of 2002, David checked himself into the Betty Ford Center for Alcohol Abuse.
I had to get down to the bottom to realize that I am deserving of all this.
Newly sober, he focused on raising his daughters and spending time with his wife, Pamela.
He definitely is my best friend. We can fight like brothers and sisters. But we're like any other couple. You know, I mean, we're real. And that is, I can be real with him. We're a very, very normal family behind everything else. We love each other to the umph. We can love each other, you know, like lovers, like best friends, like brother and sister. But we are very, very, very tight.
When he wasn't spending time with his family and working for charities, David loved to ride his motorcycle. Fast. Ironically, he and Pamela were barely traveling the speed limit when an accident on February 20th, 2003 nearly cost them their lives.
We were only going 25, 30 miles an hour, and it was a beautiful day. We got caught in a wind gust, a wind shear, the kind that blows, it rocks your car on the freeway or blows a truck off, closed LAX, the same time it happened to us.
I remember David and I on the motorcycle. I put my arms around him and I said, "Ooh, it got cold," and I remember it being really windy. That's all I remember. I remember nothing else.
And I broke something in my back, but it was hairline fractures that busted my arm and my hand. That was nothing compared to what's happened to my wife.
When I woke up, everything was broken. The bones were completely out. This leg from my knee down, there wasn't a bone not broken. I mean, it was just shattered. And my ribs were all broken.
It was hard for David to see Pamela having to go through so much because of the motorcycle accident when he was driving.
It was difficult, yeah. He was feeling a lot of pain over that accident. And I know he was crushed by it, and, you know, she continues to be rehabilitated from that, but it was difficult.
David's been there for her the whole time. I'm sure it's been very refreshing for Pamela to know that you have a partner who's going to be there for you through the long process of healing.
Pamela spent months recuperating, much of it in a wheelchair. The experience inspired the couple to get involved with Wheels for Humanity, a group providing customized wheelchairs to those in need overseas.
David came down to Costa Rica and helped us deliver and fit a little over 300 wheelchairs in Costa Rica. And actually, David helped out a lot. We have some problems with customs officials in these countries, and our wheelchairs were still locked up in customs. He went in to the customs office with us, and everyone was in shock because it was the Night Rider. And they released our wheelchairs within 45 minutes of after David walking through the customs warehouse.
In 2003, David's Baywatch producing partners suggested he join a reunited cast for one more hurrah. David was still bothered by his unceremonious departure from the series, and he embraced the chance to write a new chapter. In the 2-hour special, Baywatch Hawaiian Wedding, it was revealed that Mitch Buchanan hadn't died in a fatal explosion. In fact, he was preparing to get married.
What do you say, you and I, go over to the 7 sacred pools, naked, a little skinny dipping?
Take the top 15 people, bring them all back together, put them in Hawaii, and do the best Baywatch 2-hour movie we've ever done. We had a limitation of money, time, and press hanging off balconies and off of trees to get the best shots they could. The Hawaiian Tropic pageant was filming at the hotel with another 115 gorgeous women that were all our extras. So it was a sea of beautiful women.
Hi. Oh.
Get out there.
Thank you. It was great.
He was the same professional, upbeat, positive guy that I had known for 5 years on the Baywatch television series.
Your father is the most wonderful man I've ever met.
Obi, I've asked Allison to marry me.
He was still that big kid, my buddy, guy I've known for all my life. Still same fun guy.
Congratulations.
With Baywatch over and done at last, David stopped worrying about being taken seriously and started having more fun with his public persona. In the hit animated feature The SpongeBob SquarePants Movie, he played an impossibly heroic lifeguard named David Hasselhoff.
One of my hardest lines ever was, "I'm David Hasselhoff." In SpongeBob, I had no idea how to deliver that. "I'm David Hasselhoff." Who the f is David Hasselhoff? "I'm David Hasselhoff." I had no idea, so I asked the director, I said, "How do I say this?" He goes, "You're Superman."
How will we ever get back to Bikini Bottom now?
I can take you there.
Who are you?
I'm David Hasselhoff.
We knew he was in the movie, but we didn't know, like, any part. So when you see him, you're like, whoa. And then you don't know what you're supposed to, like, expect because it's a SpongeBob movie. You know if he's going to be, like, real or a character. I'm sitting down watching, and all of a sudden I see this huge, like, 7 feet tall impression of my dad. I was like, what the heck is going on?
Initiating launch sequence.
What the? Did you see that?
The control.
Whoa!
All hands on deck.
In the Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn comedy Dodgeball, David winked at his image as a Teutonic rock god.
If you poke fun at yourself before the rest of us can get to that job, you're going to be better off. David Hasselhoff has a sense of humor about himself, and that's really helping him with the new generation.
People see that he's willing to have fun with his image and poke fun at it a little bit, much like a William Shatner.
David knew too well he was only human. In 2004, he experienced a personal setback when he was arrested for drunk driving. The news shocked friends and fans who'd hoped that David's battles with alcohol were behind him. But the actor tackled the problem with his trademark honesty and optimism.
I was trying to save the world, control my career, everything, but I forgot to take care of who I am as a person. And there comes a time when you really have to just sit back and smell the coffee, breathe the fresh air, and appreciate what you have. And right now, I just want to keep having fun.
David was definitely having fun in the summer of 2004 when he starred on the London stage as tap dancing lawyer Billy Flynn in the revival of the smash hit musical Chicago.
He had, I think, 2 weeks rehearsal and opened in this amazing part, in London. Got rave reviews, business was incredible. That's an example of David. He doesn't say no.
It's kind of like jumping out of an airplane. There's such an adrenaline rush being on stage. Every night you have this 2,000 people right here in your hand, and you control that. I am, Mr. Theater. I love this voice. I love reaching the back row and overplaying it.
On the last day of the show, he walked on stage and took a water gun and started shooting the audience out of nowhere. It was just really funny.
After completing his run, David showed no signs of slowing down. In 2005, he signed on for a co-starring role in the Adam Sandler, Kate Beckinsale comedy, Click.
David has achieved probably every dream that he wanted.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, our honored guest, David Hasselhoff.
David credited much of his success and his happiness to the loyal group of family, friends, and co-workers that surrounded him. Some, like his manager, Jan McCormick, had been part of his extended family for decades.
I think I am someone who cares about other people, who's gregarious, who is outgoing, who loves life, and is appreciative of what he has.
Thank you for making my dream come true.
For 3 decades, audiences haven't just enjoyed the work of David Hasselhoff. They've come to feel he's a member of the family.
David Hasselhoff.
It's an affection that the actor has more than reciprocated, both in his determination to live up to his good guy image.
I wouldn't trade these last 3 months with you for anything in the world.
And his desire to always give back.
People don't see me and say, "Mr. Hassel," they go, "David!"
David, to your left!
That's what I want them to say. Mike, yo, Michael, yo, Knight Rider. They believe that I am that guy because I am that guy.
Yeah, I care, but don't tell anybody, okay?
He really understood his audience and understood television.
I had to come to terms with myself.
And he's excited about being on the set. That is so wonderful for an actor who's been around as long as David has. David still has that little spark about him.
He has worked for everything that he's gotten, and I'm looking forward to see what he's going to be doing in the future.
I'm having fun and getting paid millions of dollars.
He continues to grow. His wheels are always going. But it's been a bullet ride. And the bullet ride will continue.
Oh, no. Not again, huh? Heart, humor, action. Those are the three successes to my career. Heart, make sure there's a story. There's got to be a story. Wasn't sure you were ever coming home. Humor, don't take yourself so seriously. Smart aleck car. And let's have fun, action. Heart, humor, and action.
And it took me a long time to get here. But I'm not leaving.
2006 had its ups and downs for David Hasselhoff. The upside for the former Baywatch star was the announcement that he would be a judge on America's Got Talent. The show is currently in its 4th season, but in July of that year, Hasselhoff's personal life went through a transition as the actor and his wife Pamela Bob finalized their divorce after 16 years of marriage. The court awarded them joint custody of their 2 teenage daughters. The following November, Hasselhoff landed the role of flamboyant gay director Roger Debris in the Las Vegas production of The Producers. In May 2007, a compromising home video clip of Hasselhoff surfaced. The actor managed to survive the backlash and return to the role which made him famous, Michael Knight, in 2008's TV movie Knight Rider. Whether it's acting, singing, or judging new talent, the Hoff has proven throughout his 30-year career that he's more than the pretty face with the nice car.